Hello and welcome. My name is Anita Bozer, and I'm doing a book read-along of my book, Undulation Relieves Stiffness and Feel Young. This is my second installment when we're going to go over the fundamentals, which are the first 5 undulations that I think anybody could do any day and benefit from. But first, I'd like to do a reminder of something we covered in the first installment, and that's the no pain guidelines. As it says in the book, it's the most important part of the book, and that is learning to move in a way that's pain-free. When we were kids, we moved effortlessly, and when we did something that hurt, we'd stop doing it. It was common sense. And as adults, we can take some of that common sense back into our lives. So if I suggest a movement and it hurts, if you try it and that hurts, you don't have to be totally afraid of the movement, but try to go into the movement maybe smaller or slower or from a different angle. Find a way to move that doesn't hurt, and then you'll have more possibilities. So I just wanted to remind you, no pain equals no pain, and that's a good thing. Now, the second thing I want to point out is in the book, it talks about the photographs. Now, you're watching this on video, so you're going to see me demonstrate some of the undulations, but don't try to make your movements look like mine. Our brains are wired in a way that we try to duplicate other people's movements, and part of that is good. But if you're trying to move like me, you might be missing the way that your body wants or needs to move. So sometimes it's good to close your eyes and just feel the movement, especially if somebody else is going about it and you're trying to follow them. But sometimes it's nice to get some different movement ideas so we're not stuck in the same old rut. I'd like to read to you from the introduction of the fundamentals chapter, and hope I don't bore you by reading something if you've already read it, but here it is. Undulation has no built-in measure of achievement. There's no score or faster time, no perfect pose or weight to add. It's not a competition, even with yourself. If you try to impose a drive for success into this exercise, you may miss its fundamental benefits. So that's one thing different about undulation, is that we're really trying to get the body to feel from inside what is best for it, because consider this, your body knows exactly where it's stuck and what's in its best interests. You don't have to push hard or force beyond its capabilities. Doing what your body wants to do is the grease that lubricates the wheels of fluidity. Some moves will come easily, others are more challenging. It will always be that way. Even if we've been moving for a long time, there are challenging movements. You may think that the goal is to make everything move equally, but that's impossible. What we're just trying to do is to move better. So the fundamentals are 5 undulations, and we'll start with the first one, which I called easy sway. I'll show you a picture from the book. It's swaying from side to side. And as we sway from side to side, we're going to just feel how that is in your own body, what you notice as you're swaying from side to side. This was the original undulation created by Joseph Heller, who is a structural integrator, and he devised an 11-session series based on the 10-session Rolfing series, which was the original form of structural integration. I'm going to stop for a moment, and you can too. But his undulation was to free the spine after the body work that freed all the connective tissue around the spine. And this was the exercise, if you will. We called it homework, not exercise, that people could do at home to keep that freedom in their spine. And when I was going through my Heller work training, this was a homework assignment that we had, which was to undulate every day for a week. And this was the one undulation. It was the side to side. And what I have to admit, I hated it. At first, that movement, just my spine was not that fluid. Even after the session, I had this idea in my mind that it needed to be graceful and willowy like the picture in the client handbook, and mine wasn't. It was jerky and stiff. But what I found is that by the end of the week, if I did that exercise every day, excuse me, for a week, at the end of the week, it wasn't stiff or jerky anymore. So it was through repetition that my body was able not only to make the movement easier, but I believe it's because the tissues became hydrated and not just stronger and more flexible, but they actually became healthier through the movement. So that's what I'm going to talk you through. I started moving prematurely because I'm prone to do that. I'm going to back up my chair so you can see a little bit more, I think. Okay. So we're going to just sway from side to side. And think of, as you're swaying, as you sway to the right side, let the left side of your spine open and vice versa. I can't think too much about directions here. And I realize you can't see my whole spine. Let me back out of here a little bit more. Okay, well, so here's what's different. We're not just moving to try to make anything happen. Feel where in your spine this is easy. What part of your spine moves very easily side to side? And remember not to do anything that hurts. And if you're looking at yourself in your monitor, don't evaluate if you're rotating or anything. Just feel inside. Now come back to center. We always move from the places that move easily. That's just our natural inclination. I'd like you to remember a place in your body that felt stiff when you were going side to side, and let that space lead the movement. It's a place that doesn't move very much. For me, that's between my shoulder blades, especially up at top. So if I let that lead my movement, it's different. For me, it has to be slow or small. You go ahead and find a place, a stiff place in your body, and see what's it like if that place gets to be the leader. Again, moving in a pain-free way, giving it just a minute. This reminds me of being a kid and not being picked for the baseball team, right? The kids would play softball, and I didn't have a mitt, and I wasn't very good, and I couldn't catch, and I couldn't throw. So I was never asked to be part of the team, right? Until it's like, oh, okay, we'll take her. And I think parts of our body feel that way too, is that they don't get to participate. When I go side to side between my shoulder blades, doesn't know how to move that way. It's not very good at it, so it gets left behind. But if I give it a chance, like I am now, it's like, okay, let that part move. And then come back to center and give yourself a moment. And just like from the very beginning, like the first time I said it, just sway from side to side. And hopefully that spot in your body feels a lot better, and or your movement feels more fluid. It doesn't take a lot, really a minute. And so when doing easy sway, I like to just go from side to side, but then stop and start 3 or 4 times. So each space in my body gets a chance to get lubricated, get some nourishment into those tissues. So that's easy sway. One thing that I recommend at the end of each undulation is that you give yourself a chance to rest. So we moved, and hopefully we opened up some new possibilities of movement. And now if we just rest for a moment and give the body a chance to incorporate those changes, then it's more likely to stay fluid before we jump on to the next thing, which is what we usually do, right? We, do our leg presses or whatever is the exercise of the moment, and then we jump to the next movement, next exercise. And here we're going to just rest for a minute. And if you can, close your eyes and let your body just feel for what the changes are. Maybe that part of your body mine feels a bit more alive, like it's gotten some more blood to that area or something. It's feeling new sensations. So I'll give myself just a moment to feel those before we go on to the second fundamental, which I call reverse the slouch. Okay, so just reading my screen there for a moment. I'm actually going to turn sideways after I explain it. A lot of times we sit like this in front of a desk, behind a steering wheel, right? There's a natural C curve. There are a few people who have the opposite pattern in their body. Maybe they've been taught to sit up straight, right? So they might arch their back, or they might curve their low back and arch their upper back. There are all sorts of possibilities of different patterns. But in reverse the slouch, we're going to let ourselves go into that C curve, that slouchy position, and then we're going to lift up out of the slouch into a little bit of a back bend. But what's different than our typical way of moving, because we'll be like, you can hear your mom saying, sit up straight, and you go, okay, I'll do that. And that voice still runs in our heads as adults. I hear that all the time. But instead of trying to pull ourselves up from the top, we're going to use a structural integration concept, and that's to push ourselves up from the bottom. So if you let yourself droop forward, press your feet into the ground, and then lift up, trying to articulate vertebra by vertebra. So getting out of our normal pattern and coming up slowly into a back bend, and then slowly trying to articulate vertebra by vertebra as we round down. So it becomes different than our normal slouch. And to come up, you're pressing into your feet and lifting up from the bottom first, trying to articulate vertebra by vertebra, coming into a bit of a back bend, not moving so much from your neck as from the rest of your spine. So let me turn sideways so you can see it that way. Okay, so rounding down and letting my, you can't see it, but rounding down through the pelvis and then pressing through my feet to roll my pelvis, come back onto my sit bones, lifting up vertebra by vertebra. Neck moving last, and then coming down vertebra by vertebra. So just like an easy sway, we want to help lubricate and nourish the parts of our spine that don't normally move. So we have articulating vertebra by vertebra, but then the second step is to feeling, can you do this in a way that gets those immobile places more movement? So it might not just be up and down. You might start feeling that there's some place that's really stuck. And as you go down or up, you can say, what does it take to get in there? So you might add a little bit of different type of movements, or as you're going down and up, you might not go all the way down. You might find an interesting place. And as you're rolling over, it's like, wow, I really can't get that spot right there. Again, my upper shoulder blades, right? How do I get that part to move? So I might add some wiggles and coming back up and down through it without going all the way to the bottom of the movement. That is reverse the slouch. I'm going to take a look because each of the undulations in my book has some variations. And so Yes, and the variations for reverse the slouch, it's initiating the movement from different places. And that can really change it too. If you initiate the movement from your pelvis versus initiating the movement from your chest. I'd like to caution you to try not to initiate all the movement from your neck, because the neck has the smallest vertebra, the smallest muscles. So it's not nearly as strong as the rest of the spine. One of the benefits to undulation is helping the rest of the spine get stronger. Let's move to the third undulation, which is slow motion. So any movement you do, whether it's an undulation or it's walking to open the front door, or if you're weird like me, sometimes I experiment with unloading the dishwasher as slowly as possible. And when you use slow movements, what you do is you get deeper into your core muscles. The smaller muscles tune into the smaller movements. So by moving in a slow way, you get more of your core engaged. And in the book, what we use is we use easy sway to just go from side to side. But you could use reverse the slouch or any movement. But let's just go from side to side again. And now make it half speed. So let's say, I'm going to count for a second. Let's do regular speed. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I'm using a count of 5 to get to the side and to come back to center with my counting. Now to slow it down, I'm going to do it half speed. So for a count of 10. Okay, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Coming back slowly. And remembering you want to work in a pain-free way, right? So we're slowing it down only if we can do that without it hurting. And you might find you need to make the movement smaller in order to keep it in your pain-free range. Okay, so I'm working half speed here. And now I'm going to go even slower. Next time, even slower. Moving slowly is different for the brain. That's one of the great things about undulation, is you're giving novel input to the brain by moving in a different way. And not only does that help the synapses in your brain, but it helps your movement be more adaptable. Still going slow. There's a tendency at some points to go fast. Just slow yourself down. There's another undulation called barber pole, which basically is the same thing done slowly, but it's rotation. You think of the old-fashioned barber pole. Okay, one more time, really slow. You can pick whichever movement you want. I can hear somebody there. If you're on, you might want to take a look and make sure that you are muted, which is down in the bottom left corner, so that you're not part of the recording, unless of course you want to be. Okay, so slow motion is the third fundamental. And for that loosened things up in a really different way. Not only did it strengthen other things, but it really did loosen things up, at least in my body. And again, you can use it in any movement you want. Slow motion comes in handy. Our fourth fundamental is breathing. Breathing in some ways should be first, but we live in a culture that doesn't really work with subtle movement all that much. We kind of gloss right on over it. But breath is so vital, and it actually includes a little bit of movement in your body. So if you just sit or lie down, whichever motion is most comfortable for you, you don't have to sit. for purposes of this video, it's easier for me to demonstrate at least these undulations sitting. In the future, I'll have to be more creative. But just notice your breath. And I'm not breathing in a super big way, but you might be able to see on the screen that my body moves a little bit. There's expansion through the rib cage. Tiny bit, my ribs push my arms out. I used to breathe like this. My shoulders would lift up with every inhale. That's not a good thing. I finally learned how not to do that. But the ribs do expand and then rest. And as you do that, there's a little tiny movement to the spine that goes with it. So if you're feeling this, you can enhance that motion just the tiniest bit. So inhale, you can lift your chest, and exhale, you can let it go. If that's what you feel. If you feel something different in your body, just enhance it. So like slow motion, this is an unusual movement that gets deep into our bodies. If you use this subtle motion of paying attention to your breath and just enhancing it a little, you end up, like I said before, engaging something different, lubricating something different in your spine. It's not very interesting to watch, but I hope you get the idea. As we go through the book, there will be other subtle undulations. And if you don't get it, if it's like, this one is passing me by, that's okay. As you develop more body awareness, it might come to you later, or it just might not be your thing. Either way, it's okay. Give it a try, though. It doesn't hurt to pay attention to your breathing for a minute. Every day, actually. And then that leads us to our final fundamental, which is called free form. And free form can be a really, really difficult concept. It was for me in the beginning. As a matter of fact, in my structural integration training, part of our training, we had these great teachers. They came in, Regina and Linda came in, and they were leading a movement practice. They were well known for being fabulous movement teachers. Everybody was so excited. I was so excited. And our assignment was to lie on the floor and to feel what our body wanted to do and move in the way that our body wanted to move. And for 18 minutes, I lied on the floor and was thinking, my body doesn't know how to move. My brain tells my body how to move. What are they even talking about? All the thing was going on. But everybody else around me was like moving all sorts of different ways. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm going to get kicked out of the training because I don't know how my body wants to move. And then, like in minute 18, of course, just before it's over, my shoulder blade, something in my shoulder blade was like, wait a minute, there's something stuck back here and I'd like to work it out. And so it's like, oh, what does that want to do? And so I was able to practice it for 2 minutes, and thank goodness at least something happened, right? So I had an idea that actually the body can decide how it wants to move. And if you're not sure, if you're not already like going for it after listening to me, because people who are used to this concept are very happy to have their body move, and they're already going there. But if that's not you, like, what does that mean? How do I do that? I'd go back into just feeling your body and what feels uncomfortable, if there's any place that feels uncomfortable or stiff, and what sort of movement would make that feel good. Really, this is the opposite of no pain, no gain. This is what movement would feel great. Now, of course, I was talking about my shoulder, so it's reminding me that, yeah, I could use some movement. And so I'm going into a free form for what my body would like to do. And you'll have to try not necessarily to copy me, because it's unlikely that your body wants to do just what my body wants to do, right? I lifted some heavy things yesterday, Look at these great big barn doors that we put on, so my shoulders are feeling it. My hands, forearms are doing a lot of work in a screwdriver, right? So, want to work out those kinks. And that's what undulation is about, is working out your own kinks with your own movement in a non-linear, non-repetitive way. And I'm sitting down in the chair, but a lot of times when I do free form, I'll move from the chair down to the floor and remember being like a little kid, back being a 1-year-old when our bodies were the most interesting things, right? And we would, play with our toes. This would just be like, oh, this is so interesting. Or your hand was like the most interesting thing in the world, right? So free form, other than being pain-free, doesn't really have any rules. It's move any way your body wants. And as we go through the undulations in the book, I won't have time in these videos, but as we go forward, pretty much every undulation then morphs into and then move into free form. So if we're going to start with the easy sway, you can start with the easy sway, but hopefully after a minute or two, easy sway is going to merge into something else and merge into something else, which merges into something else. And that's how we keep all of the joints of our body lubricated and healthy. Those are the 5 fundamentals. I hope you enjoyed going through them with me. I certainly do. And I love to do them, and I try to do some version every day, but I skip into free form pretty easily, actually. I'm ready now. If anybody has any questions, can take a look and see if there are questions. And while you can unmute yourself and ask, or you can click the button down below for chat if you have a question. And want to remind you of the other thing I forgot because I'm recording, is to rest. Ideally, we would have rested after each of those, right? We would have rested after reverse the slouch, rested after slow motion, especially slow motion, because you can get some really new awareness from that. Resting after breathing, even though breathing feels like resting, and free form. Give yourself time. It's nice in yoga class. A lot of times at the end of yoga, there'll be shavasana, which is lie down and rest pose. For some people, it's their favorite, but it really helps all the changes from that practice integrate into your body. So please do allow a minute for yourself to rest after undulating more if you have the time. So let me scoot forward here and just see. No comments or questions?
I do have a question.
Oh, a question, great.
I had mentioned to you earlier that I do the overarching when I stand up, to stand up straight, and I really have to work to relax my body. But interestingly, when I sit, I slouch.
Yeah.
So I love the way that you had brought in the structural integration aspect, having done that as well, of getting into our feet and then rolling the spine up to sit. My question is that I find when I do that, my back and neck and everything feels great, but I tend to be holding tension in my thighs, in the tops of my thighs, because I'm not used to pushing into my feet when I'm sitting. I'm used to sort of relaxing with my butt tilted in a slouch.
Right.
How do I take the tension out of the top of my thighs?
So when you're sitting, notice where the weight is in your feet. A lot of times what's missing is engaging through the core of our legs. There's a lot of talk about our core being in our abdomen, but Joseph Heller has this great drawing in our client handbook of an apple, and thinking of the core going all the way from the bottom to the top. And so in our view, our core actually starts down in our inner arches and comes up through the pelvic floor, out the crown of the head. And so engaging when you're pressing down into your feet, if you are pressing through the inner part of your legs as much as the outer part of your legs, then you're going to get more of your adductors. You're going to get that, in Tom Meyer's language, the deep front line engaged. And that should take some of the engagement out of the tops of the thighs and be more on the inner thighs. Go ahead and give it a try while I'm talking, right? So we'll all do it together, right? You know, if we lean down and then press, especially through the inner legs, there is some engagement in the legs, and that's different for a lot of people. A lot of the reason our posture is the way it is because we're avoiding using our core, which lets us sink into the joints. And this doesn't let you sink into your joints, so something has to be engaged, but hopefully it's just those deep core muscles, the ones that are designed to fire slowly and last a long time. What do you think of that?
I'm having a hard time finding the muscles of my inner thighs. It just automatically seems to go to the tops of my thighs. Maybe because I don't use my inner thighs as much as I should be. Yeah, well, it took me a while to find them too. As you're sitting, I find this easier to do in what's called constructive rest position, if you're lying on the floor with your knees bent and feet on the floor. But if we can do it sitting too, but if you press only through your heels as you're sitting, I can feel that tipping my pelvis under a little bit. And when you press through your heels, it engages the muscles in the backs of the thighs. And then, or maybe the front, it depends on your pattern. And then if you press only through the balls of the feet, you get a different sort of engagement. For me, that tilts my pelvis the other way. Then, if you press only with the outsides of your feet, that gets the outside of your legs. And then the inside, if you press only with the inside, that gets something different. And what we want to do is we want to balance and press through all parts of the foot, equally through the balls and heels, equally through the inside and outside. And where I really feel that the most is actually my lower abdominals, more than I feel it in my thighs. I just happen to know intellectually that that is connected. Thank you. That was informative. Okay. And patterns, our body patterns have been with us for decades. And so it takes a little bit of time to unwind those patterns or to create a different awareness, because in certain parts of our body, they're just used to not working. It takes them a little while to realize their vacation's over. It's like coming back from Hawaii. It takes you a little while. Okay, if there are any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them. If not, you think of a question later, I'm going to post this video on my YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/undulationlady, and then also to my Facebook page, which is Undulation Exercises, where I also post videos of fun stuff. And you can too. If you have come across a fun undulation from any other form of movement, feel free to post it, because we always love having great ideas and learning from each other. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you in 2 weeks when I'll be recording again, and we'll be doing the undulations for low back and hips. And remember, sway every day.